Hey everyone, welcome to the Beyond podcast, where we look at and celebrate the victories Jesus is winning in our lives and in our community. I'm Nate Murray. I'm one of the pastors at Hopevale Church, and I'm your host. And my guest today is Rob Quinn. Rob, thank you for being here.
No problem, man. I'm excited to be here.
Rob is the preteen director here at Hopevale Church. He's a part of the 456.org lead team, where he writes preteen curriculum and resources churches and ministries for preteen ministry, which is a big deal.
Right.
He's also written for Orange, a publishing company that focuses on family ministry and helping churches with that. He has also been doing preteen ministry now for over 13 years. We're really blessed to have him at Hopevale Church, and he's got a lot of expertise to bring to bear when it comes to preteen ministry. So, Rob, just right off the bat, tell us why you love preteens and why you love preteen ministry. It's a unique thing, and you do it really, really well. So tell us where that love and that passion comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I get to ask this question all the time, like, how does a 48-year-old guy love?
Why do you want to hang out with preteens?
Yes. So I think for me, because I was the guy that came to Christ late in life. So I was mid-20s, late 20s when I came to Christ. And I jumped into serving right away. It was kind of like my deal. I got asked by our pastor's wife to serve and lead this fifth grade group of boys, and realized really quick that in my journey where I was at, I was asking the same questions that a preteen was, and watching my faith develop at an adult level because I can understand quicker and faster,
right?
And fell in love with that. Like I fell in love with the idea of watching them learn to start to own their faith and not mom and dad's faith, and then had two great guys walk into my life that explained preteen to me.
Wow.
And that was like 13 years ago, who I'm still good friends with today. And it was like, I knew right then and there, this is the age group I want to be part of. And they're
so
a lot of
cool.
fun. They're just fun to be around. So
lots of energy.
Yeah. Keeps me young. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to start off you talked a little bit about when you came to faith. I love that. Part of us exploring the victories that Jesus is winning is also what he's doing in our life. So I love asking people a couple different things. What is Jesus teaching you? And then where do you see Jesus at work in your life right now? So you can answer either one of those, but what has Jesus been teaching you recently, or where's an area he's been at work in your life lately?
Yeah, for me, I would say right now where Jesus is working is how to let go of or equip new leaders to take over this preteen mantle, because I feel like he's leading myself into this next chapter, into really diving into the family aspect of how a preteen family is working and helping parents understand how awesome their kids are and how confusing they are at the same time, and how they can walk with them. I'm really loving that as a parent whose daughter's 19 and she's moved out. I've lived through it, and just to use that experience and my knowledge in this area to help those families do that. And it's great to watch God put people in my life that I can start giving the stage per se to, young adults, young leaders that are ready to start taking that mantle. So I don't have to be the guy in there. I can be a guy over here talking to mom and dad more.
That's awesome. Well, as a parent who's had a preteen that came through the preteen ministry and loved it, and we saw him grow in so many ways, just want to thank you for what you do. Thank you for who Jesus is in you, who you allow him to be through you. Jesus is doing some big things through you at Hopevale. We're really, really blessed to have you. You've been a gift to us. So
I appreciate it. So
thank you. One of the victories that we've noticed lately that's been a product of the preteen ministry here is a specific class that you taught to parents. So you were talking about turning over leadership to other leaders so that they can be in the room with the preteens so you can be in the room with the parents. And that's exactly what you did recently. So recently you did a class for parents here at Hopevale called Parenting in a Tech World.
Yes.
And I just want you to know I heard all kinds of feedback about it, and all of it positive. And it's really interesting. We're going to dive into some of the specifics of the topic, but I think what that topic allowed was to introduce a whole concept of parenting that I know you'll talk a little bit more about. But the class was not just about tech stuff. It wasn't just about social media. It did deal with that, but there's a larger strategy at play that's really important. So I really wanted to bring you on to talk about that because Jesus clearly was winning victories in several families' lives.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk more about that. So right off the top of the bat, you used a phrase as a part of that class called control the flinch.
Yes.
Talk to us about what that means.
Yes. So, I learned this concept years and years ago at a conference. Big time youth pastor guy, if you've been in ministry, Doug Fields, kind of pioneer of, full-time youth ministry.
Saddleback Church out in California.
I sat in a seminar class with him at a conference, him and his wife, and they were talking about husband and wives both working in churches or high-capacity volunteers, because Jody was on staff and I was serving for her highly. And he talked about this idea of like you have to control your flinch as a parent. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? He goes, that moment when you're sitting at the dinner table and your 16-year-old daughter sits down at the table and she says something like, hey, I think I want to start sleeping with my boyfriend.
Yeah.
How do you react in that moment?
Yeah.
He goes, and there's multiple.
Flinch.
Yeah, you flinch. And like, how do you flinch in that moment? And he goes, you have to consciously decide, am I going to fight for being this authoritative parent, or am I going to fight for a relationship with my kids so they're going to come to me with those things? And he goes, and those are defining moments. And how you react in that moment will dictate how and when your kid will come to you in the future with something. Because the reality is your kids are going to mess up. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to make decisions that we don't agree with.
Yeah.
And do we want them to come to us and help us walk through that mistake? Or do they want to, or are they afraid of us because they're going to feel like we judge them, we feel bad about that, or treat them in a punishment type world? And it's controlling that initial and I remember Doug saying at that moment he grabbed whatever was on his plate to eat dinner and just shoved it in his mouth, so he stopped what he wanted to say.
Right.
He goes, and then it turned into this great conversation and multiple conversations and whatnot. Yeah. And ultimately, you can't control their actions, but you can control when they come to you and how we walk alongside them.
That's so good. So I worked in family ministry for a while, youth ministry and family ministry, and there's a pastor down in Texas. His name's Brian Haynes, and he has a model for family ministry called the Legacy Path, and it's really, really good. But one of the things he talked about is the never-ending conversation,
right?
And how important it is to establish that conversation that never ends, and where your kids, your students, your preteens always know they can come to you if they have a question, if they have a thought, if they've been introduced to something at school, whether it's an idea or a concept or exposed to something, they can come to you and they know they can talk to you about it.
Right.
So I love that, and especially that's a very tactile control. The
yeah,
there are times with the preteen, they come home or have been introduced to something possibly at school or with friends, and your tendency is like, oh no.
Yeah. We go into protection mode. We go into, how are you so stupid? Why did you do that mode? And I'll be the first to admit, as a parent, I messed it up multiple times.
Okay.
And there's a realization that if you keep that in the front of your mind, that when you do mess it up, that you go to your kid, you admit it.
Yeah.
Because that's going to sell it too. Because it's okay that we're going to mess up too as a parent. God doesn't expect us to be a perfect parent.
Right.
And we're gonna flinch hard sometimes in the wrong way.
Right.
And then you just sit down next to their bed at night and you just ask for apology, ask for forgiveness, and say, I don't want that relationship to be us. I want to fight for our relationship. I don't want to, just because I'm your parent, I told you so. I want to have conversation with you.
And what a great way to honor your kid too, your preteen, your student, to humble yourself in that way, and to show honor to them. That however you treated them, they deserve better than that. You know? That's a great way to honor them and build that relationship of trust. Okay, so let's dive into some of the specifics of this class. So I recently listened to a discussion between a couple of psychologists, and they were talking about, they referred to the current student population as the internet generation.
Yes.
So iGen, that was a new phrase for me. I get lost with all the Zoomers, Boomers.
Yeah, I don't know.
Gen X, all that stuff. So, but that's the first time I'd heard that term, iGen, the internet generation. And they were talking specifically about some cultural things that were taking place with that generation. And some of them are obvious. They're very comfortable online.
Right.
It's a natural part of their world. Things like we've got these tablets in front of us. I still, have to work hard to function with them. My phone. I remember times with our youngest, he would, be playing a game on our phone, and he would change something on the phone. We had no idea how he did it. He's like, "Oh, I did this," and he's like 4 years old, right? So this technology stuff is so natural and an integrated part of their life,
right?
In a way that we don't really understand. But then they were talking about larger issues of narcissism and like toxic bullying and all kinds of things that happen online. And then just culturally, just some things that were happening with an entire generation there with anxiety and despair and all kinds of things. Yeah. So we're well aware of all the bad stuff that could happen.
Yeah.
We as adults, I'm sure, are also navigating waters where we're trying to learn how to use social media in a healthy way, where, we can express things without, feeling like the world needs to hear every thought we have, things like that. But what I loved about the class is rather than getting hung up on all the dangerous stuff, like I remember back in when I was in high school when they did sex ed with us in high school, it was just like a nightmare, like it was, let's fill you with enough nightmare fuel that you won't even think about doing
right.
it. That wasn't the approach of the class, right? The approach instead was, let's be proactive.
Yes.
I love that, especially in terms of looking for the victories Jesus is winning. Because my thought, what I've found Jesus to be, is very proactive. Jesus does not react to things.
Right.
So when it comes to what he's doing, he's already at work. We just have to join him in what he's already doing. So in the area of social media, all of that with our kids, talk to us about being proactive in that sphere instead of reactive.
Yeah, I think it's. I think you summed up controlling the flinch. Start to think about, how am I going to react when my kid comes to me?
Right.
Because they're going to.
And they're gonna, what are some of the specific things that kids are gonna come to you with?
Kids are gonna mess up. They're going to come to you and say, Mom and Dad, I was on YouTube and this link led me to this link, and they're going to show you a picture of some sort of maybe pornography or something.
Right.
What do I do with this?
Right.
Or they're going to come to you and they're going to say, hey, I downloaded this app and now I'm into this conversation with this guy or this girl and I don't know what to do.
Right.
What kind of environment are we creating where our kids can come to those with things
instead of not being ashamed of it and hiding it, and then the enemy uses that for all kinds of destructive things. Yeah.
And then they turn to places that aren't going to guide them right, which is ultimately their friends,
right?
Or an older sibling.
The great harbingers of truth.
Yeah,
their other preteen friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A sixth grader teaching a sixth grader is probably not the ideal way to do things. So, so it's creating that world. It's creating that world, just like. Jesus wants us to come to him with everything, and he loves us. There's unconditional grace, undeserved grace. He doesn't flinch. He knows what's happening, and he wants us to bring it to him. So it's the same thing, That's the one thing I talk to our parents about, God is our parent. He blessed us as parents, so we can go to him with everything. We want our kids to be able to come to us with anything.
Love that.
He doesn't flinch. We shouldn't flinch. And when we do, because we're not perfect, we need to admit that we messed up to our kids and walk them through why we messed up so bad. Because 99% of the time it's because we don't want our kids to get hurt. We want to protect them from the evils of the world, or we just don't want them to be judged by any other means. Considering we live in that type of world, where we're always looking at the other parent. Like, am I parenting okay or whatever? That was my stipulation the first day of class. Is like I had 30 parents in this class, and I said, these are the do's and don'ts of this class. The first do is we're going to be open, and the first don't is we're not going to judge somebody. We might have parents in here that have third graders on social media, and we might have 16-year-old that they're like, no, my kids are not allowed on. We're not judging parenting styles.
Right.
We're going to have conversations with each other, and we're going to talk about, well, why did you make that decision, and why did you make that decision? Because ultimately, as the church, we want to help parent each other together.
Isn't that awesome?
Because we shouldn't have to do it alone.
Yeah, and even with what what parents are dealing with on social media.
Right.
They're dealing with the best version of other parents,
Absolutely. Right.
So there's not a lot of pictures of the toddler throwing a tantrum in the aisle at Target, right? There's pictures of honor roll, and there's pictures of my kid just won the city championship,
right.
you know, whatever it is. We very rarely display the hard stuff on social media.
Right.
So even as parents, we also deal with guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And we also, when we feel isolated, which a lot of the time we do, because that's what the world does to us, it can feel like I'm the only one dealing with this, right? So talk about that just a little bit as we enter into, we'll talk about some more specifics. But just the idea, help parents that are listening to this or grandparents that are helping raise kids, help them understand that they're not alone and that everybody's dealing with this in some way.
Yeah, that is so key. That is so key as a parent in not just technology, but everything as a parent. Somebody has gone before you. There's kids that are older than your kids, and there's kids that are younger. And for a parent to understand the fact that whatever they're dealing with, somebody else out there has dealt with. Somebody else dealt with it really well, and maybe not so well.
Right.
And grabbing those people and bringing a community together to start to see that I'm not alone is empowering for a parent.
That's awesome.
Because we can feel alone, especially in the hard stuff, because it can be overwhelming. Like you start to second guess your parenting. Am I parenting right? Am I doing it the way God wants me to do it? You start to second guess everything.
Right.
And then you're like, well, what is my kid doing that I shouldn't let them do? And it's getting around those things and around other parents and building a community of people around you to raise your kids together. It's the reason we just did baby dedication.
Right.
It's to recognize that we as a church are a church of people that want to come along everybody.
Right.
And we want to come along our families together and put families together to understand you're not alone in these moments. Because as soon as you feel alone, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then you start to lock Jesus out of it too.
Right.
So
that's right. Yeah. When we do child dedication, it's not just parents dedicating their children to God.
Right.
It's us kind of putting a pact together as a church and saying, this is what we're going to do to help you.
Right.
This is how we're going to come alongside you, how we're going to partner with you to help you raise your kids.
Right.
And you are the parent, you are the spiritual authority in their life. We are not going to allow you to abdicate that in their life, but we will come alongside you as the primary spiritual authority in their life in this world. We're going to come alongside you, help you understand who you are in Jesus, your identity, so that out of that identity, you can guide your kids into truth. So that's great. All right, let's get into the specifics.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out some specific stuff to you. So I'll be honest, this is where I'm at.
Okay.
We have a teenager, not a preteen anymore. We have a teenager now.
Welcome.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. No, it really is.
Yeah.
Our sons are amazing. But so teenager, one of the real world things we're dealing with. Pastors deal with real world stuff too. What we're dealing, isn't that crazy?
Crazy.
So with our teenager, our answer to social media so far has just been no.
Yeah.
It's just been, we're not even going there.
Right.
So our teenager has a phone, an old iPhone that's not activated anymore. So when he's at home, he can use it on Wi-Fi. When we're out and about, if he has an app or a game, he can play it. But he doesn't have data on his phone, so we've said no to that. And then we've also said no to social media. We just haven't gone down that road. What we're realizing is that solution only works for so long.
Yes.
So on the proactive end of things, at some point, because he's a part of the internet generation, he has to learn how to use these tools. So whether it's a phone where he can get on the internet anytime he wants, or whether it's a social media, whether that's, believe it or not, a lot of youth don't use Facebook. I know that's shocking.
Yeah.
But they're on other apps. Yes. So whatever the social media app is, popular at the time, we are realizing that we can't just turn a blind eye. We can't just shield him forever. At some point, we have to proactively teach him how to use this stuff.
Yes.
Now, part of where we are at as parents is we're not sure we know how to use it. Like we recognize in ourselves that like we both have gone through periods where we take social media off our phones because we're like, wait a second, I'm spending too much time on it. Or I'm noticing that I don't feel great, and I feel down and I'm comparing myself to others. And so we are also in real time learning to use it ourselves. But we're realizing we've got to teach him how to use it. So I've had some great conversations with you on that front on, okay, if we take this step, what are some good things? So for other families that are in that boat, whether they have a 16-year-old that's never used it or they have a 10-year-old, they're thinking, again, no judgments anywhere.
Right.
But if they're at that point where they're like, okay, my kid really wants social media. How are we going to handle this? What advice would you give to parents as they're stepping into that?
Yeah, the biggest thing, and we hit this a lot in the class, was first and foremost, we teach our kids more than we realize by our actions, by what we model. Kids learn a lot by watching what other people do. And the first person they see every morning and the last person they see at night is mom and dad, and other people in their lives. So they are going to start modeling their social media usage and their computer usage and their internet and tech usage on what they see mom and dad do.
Okay, I'm flinching inside right now.
That's exactly. So we say things like, I've had this conversation with my kid, hey, no phone at the dinner table, when then I turn around and my phone dings and I pick it up.
Exactly, yeah.
Fail. Total parent fail, So we have to first, if we want to teach our kids good technology use, we have to look at ourselves first. Because that's who they're looking at first. Our mom and dad sitting at the dinner table when they say no cell phones at the table and their phone's sitting next to them. Are they saying, hey, we're going to say no, 2 hours of game time or whatever, but yet mom and dad are playing games on their phone at 10 o'clock at night. They are going to see what we do. And then eventually they're going to question that. And they're going to say, well, why do you get to do it and I don't? And the answer of, well, I'm your parent, I do as I say, isn't going to work.
It doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work anymore.
And I know from other things I've learned about this generation, there's a deep sense of justice in this generation.
Yes.
So when they see us doing it, like, you're not allowed to, don't do as I do, then, there's a deep sense of injustice there for them. Yeah.
So it starts with starting those conversations with them and asking them, what do you think of technology? How much do you think you should be able to have access to? And start to walk them through those things.
So it's a conversation. It's a two-way conversation.
And then step out of your comfort zone and admit, I messed that one up too. Like, you're right. I shouldn't do that. I tell you not to do this and I shouldn't do it too. So let me model what I'm asking you to do. And do those things. The next step is, as you get them into those conversations and you start to think you're going to allow them into certain things, write out contracts. It's something that's been around for a really long time. We did this with Sydney when she was, I think we gave her phone at 11 years old. And it was a contract. And the contract was very specific. You will have your phone here. You will not have it here. You will not do this and this. And she signed it. And in that contract was also ramifications, as if you did this, you're going to lose this and do that.
She knows the consequences ahead of time.
Yeah. And get their buy-in on it. Don't just say you only get 1 hour a day. Said, okay, so we're going to talk about how much we're going to give you on the internet a day. What do you think is a good number? Odds are they're going to hit a number lower than what you think. You may be like unlimited. Maybe the kid's like unlimited 24/7 anytime I want to. That's not going to happen. So great way to shoot for the moon, but get their buy-in on it, especially in the preteen age when they're starting to develop their own life and who they are and understand who they are. When they start to own that, because they have a say-so in it, and set a consequence. Like, okay, you agreed to this. You agreed to 2 hours of video games. I didn't. And you blew through your 2 hours between 8 in the morning and 10 in the morning on Saturday. I don't know what you want me to do, bud. Like, you did that. I didn't. And then they own that. And then they start to really realize that. And we have those contracts. I have them online. I can post those wherever. We've got multiple different versions of it. So that's a really cool thing. You can get them on, you just Google tech contracts, and we've got one for video games and phones and all that stuff. So it's getting their buy-in, starting those conversations early. I will tell you, a cop-out for parents is super easy one for social media is, their federal law states 13 is the legal age to have social media. So if you're looking for an out,
I'm sorry, bud,
you're past that now.
The federal government has said,
I mean, it's an easy parenting cop-out. It doesn't work all the time because I also think if, so many of our kids, their communication world is that. And even as far as if your kids are into sports, if your kids are into, dramas and plays, coaches, teachers are using social media because they're leveraging it for their thing, not really understanding the other ramifications that come with it.
So, to level set expectations as believers, we know we are not to mirror what we see in the world, right? So we'll set that out there. But, big but there, but help us understand what is normal in the world in terms of kids and technology and social media. What is the common age where kids start getting a phone? What's the common age where they start getting social media? just so whatever we do with our kids, we need to understand what they're interacting with friends at school. So, my son's 13. He doesn't have social media. I know from what he has told me that he is a freak.
Everybody has it.
Right. Yeah. So help us understand in terms of just the world, what are the common ages where this stuff starts?
Yeah. I would say there's been a really big swing in the opposite direction of older getting things than younger. And I think, 5 to even 10 years ago, the internet world hit, smartphones hit, every kid wanted one. I mean, I was seeing second, third graders walking into church with cell phones and full access to the internet. I think then we found out all the negatives and all the bullying and all the kids aren't ready for it. So now parents are starting to swing back and be like, okay, wait a minute, because we're educating ourselves and we're seeing the ramifications of it. We're seeing the high anxiety, we're seeing the high suicidal rates, and we're linking a lot of that to the I hate to use the word social media, but online usage. I mean, we just had the authors from the Scene book in here a couple weeks ago, and one of the things they talked about is, technology is the common. It's a drug to them. It releases endorphins. It releases dopamine, and at a young age, they don't know how to handle that.
Right.
So parents are starting to see that effect, and they're like, okay, we need to back this off.
And that even that dopamine release is part of the reason when you take it away, it's a big deal, right? And it's like there is a physiological impact to taking that away from them,
right?
Especially when you first do it,
right?
Yeah. Okay.
So the ages I'm starting to see, the trends I'm starting to see is probably the 6th, 7th grade ages. Parents are starting to think, okay, we need to get you a phone. And part of that is they're also getting into to the point of life where it's like, okay, I need to leave you at school for practice, or I need to drop you off at practice for a few hours.
So there's practical reasons.
There's some practical reasons to it.
Okay.
But it's also starting to monitor, how do I walk my kids through stuff? Okay. And that takes our intentionality as a parent to learn it.
Right.
I have no desire as a 48-year-old man to learn all the new social media apps all the time.
They're so scary, Rob. They're so scary.
They are. And I'm just going to say it, they're dumb.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not, like, I don't know. Like, even Facebook. I'll tell you, I'm on Facebook for my families. I'm on Facebook for networking.
Right.
Rarely do I post, look at Rob Quinn and what he did today.
Right.
And if it is, it's a milestone thing.
Right.
I'm not knocking people that live their lives. Some people, that is how they process their life.
Exactly.
And that's okay. But we have to be intentional to learn these things. And the best way to learn them is with your kids.
Yeah, it's scary though, Rob. So we had an experience, it was actually like 3 or 4 years ago when Snapchat first came out. So we were at a family gathering, and my niece and nephews, who are older than our kids, they were, talking about Snapchat, and, I like to be involved in their life and wanted to meet them where they're at. So we, Amanda, my wife, and I downloaded Snapchat while we were at this family gathering, and I was on camera. Like, I downloaded it, I opened it, and I was already on camera. And then for the first time in my life, there was an app, I had no idea how to operate it. So then I didn't know how to not be on camera anymore. It was like just through my phone.
Yep.
So it's scary.
Yeah.
So, but then help us think through some specifics on apps and things like that. So what apps are the most popular right now? And then, like, what measure of caution do parents need to practice based on the app? Because I know every app is different.
Right.
And some of them have lots of parental controls built in. Some of them have none.
Right.
Or even are, like, actively working against parent controls. Right. So help us, what are, like, maybe the 2 or 3 most popular, and what measure of caution and attention do parents need to pay to it?
I would say right now, the 3 most popular apps for kids right now are probably Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok.
Okay.
All of those.
And they use them in different ways, right? I know that they're not equals, those apps. Correct. They're like 3 things they use in 3 different ways.
Right. The first thing that I recommend any parent, and they talked about this in our class and in the videos, was whatever app you decide to use and utilize, find out the purpose.
Okay.
None of that's secret. None of that's hidden. You can look everything up online. You can look up, they have to, part of the regulations is they have to put out why we designed this app and what we did, and find the purpose for the app.
Okay.
And then that's also a great conversation with your kids.
Okay.
Is when they're like, I want.
Tip.
So, okay, why do you want this app? Well, I want to do this. Well, what's the purpose that you want the app for, and what was the app designed for?
Wow. Okay, that's
and
really
then
good.
then especially at that age group of preteens where they're starting to ask questions, and then we're like, wait a minute, I don't understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you don't understand what that means, then you probably shouldn't be on the app. So, and you walk them through that.
And that applies to us as parents too. Like,
yes.
we're using these apps and we probably have no idea what they were designed to do.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So it takes some time. It takes some energy, and it takes some effort and intentionality to walk through those things. And it's hard because we are all busy. We're all working 40, 50, 60 hours a week and going to ball games and going to these things. It's like the last thing I want to do is spend my 2 hours of downtime at night researching an app that I'm not going to use anyways.
Right.
But my kid is.
Right.
And so I need to know why they want to use this app and how this app is being used. And then the next one is the parental controls.
Okay.
If an app is strategically trying not to have parental controls, it's not a good app.
Right.
I'll say it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned in this myself was we are the only country out there that all of our technology comes with things fully open. Every other country comes, when you get technology, if you get a smart TV, if you get a smartphone, it comes with all parental things locked at the fullest, safest area.
Oh, okay.
The United States is the only country, when I get an iPad or I get a smart TV,
where it's just wide open.
So if you don't take the time to read the manual, how to go in and set the parental controls, your kids have full access to things that you don't even know about.
Right.
So that was eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
That was something I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And so it's something that if you find an app and you can't figure out the parental controls, they're trying to hide them from you for a reason. And if they're trying to hide that from you for a reason, it's probably not a good app to have.
Okay. Are there any apps out there, anything like that parents should just, even though we're talking about being proactive, we're talking about teaching kids how to use this stuff right instead of just shielding them completely. Are there any things that you would say, like, just it's evil, just don't do it?
Yeah,
like or maybe not call it evil, but just it would be best to avoid that.
Yes.
Like, it's just going to be a big bag of hurt.
I'll get my 10%, and the 10% is like the stuff that I'm just going to tell you unfiltered. This is what this is what Rob Quinn thinks and believes.
Right.
Snapchat to me is an app that the main purpose, if you read what the main purpose in that app was designed however many years ago, to have pictures disappear instantaneously, is not healthy.
Right.
It's secrets are never good. Secretiveness is never good. Hiding things is never good. So that's an app that you have to walk with caution with.
Right. Because it was built to be secretive.
Yeah.
That's the purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
It was absolutely built for secrecy, and kids have bought into it.
Right.
They've bought into, like, well, I should have my privacy. I should be able to do what I want to do.
Right.
I should be able to do this.
In our day, it was, I should be able to keep my door closed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I remember trying to be secretive with my long distance bill, and then all of a sudden my dad walking in is like, "How'd you spend $300 on long distance?" And I'm like, "Oh, how do you find out?" Because he got the bill,
Yeah.
So I don't try to tell parents how to parent.
Right.
You've got to make the decision what you feel. You know your kid. You know what your kid can handle, what they can't handle, what they're ready for, and what they're not ready for. And you know what you know and understand. So that's an individual parent kid. And it may be different with multiple kids in your family.
Right.
Your oldest son may be able to handle that. Your youngest son may not be ready at the same age.
That's a really great perspective there. That different kids need different rules, different contracts,
right,
because of their natural tendencies.
Right. I think of a family who has maybe a 16-year-old who has high anxiety, depression, or whatever. You're going to really want to monitor their social media usage.
Right.
You may have a 13-year-old who is not struggling with any of those things.
Right.
And it may seem like you're less reins on the 13-year-old than you're on a 16-year-old, but you have to protect the individual and where they're and what they're ready for. And they need to understand that. Like, the reason I monitor your stuff is because, honey, like, you struggle with these things.
Right.
And it's okay that you struggle with these things, but we as a parent want to walk alongside you. We're walking alongside them differently because they have their own things that we want to worry about. And this isn't the thing we worry about with them right now.
Yeah. In Proverbs, it talks about raising a child in the way they should go. And when they're old, they won't depart from it. And I was really challenged early on as a parent that there's different ways to read that scripture. And the classic way is raise a child in the way that they should go. There is a way.
Right.
If you raise them in the way they're supposed to go, when they're old, they won't depart from it. And just a really insightful message I heard on that was, no, read it differently. Raise a child in the way they should go.
Yes.
And when they're old, they won't depart from it. It was just that thought that everybody has a different path through this world. We're all wired differently. And as a parent, if we meet our children where they're at, there's a beautiful picture of grace there of, you're not the same as your brother. Right. You're not the same as your sister. Just what you're saying, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. We're going to meet you in that.
Right.
And we're not going to treat you like them or like them. We're going to treat you like you. We're going to raise you in the way you should go.
Right.
And obviously there's some non-negotiables, right?
Yes.
There's kindness, there's compassion,
right.
there's, selflessness that we want for all of our kids. But we're also going to approach this, including social media, with you specifically in mind. That's
right.
a really beautiful thing.
I mean, and it's what Jesus does with us.
Yeah.
He doesn't look at Nate the same way he looks at Rob.
Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that beauty of the gospel. It's that beauty of individualism. If God could totally make us all be the same.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want us all the same.
Right.
So why would we raise everybody the same and treat our kids the same?
Right.
And I grew up that way. My dad had a specific, I did this with your older brother at this age. And when he went and did that with me, it didn't work. And I remember him being like, why is this, it worked? I'm not him.
Exactly.
I'm a different person.
Yeah.
And so we have to do that. We have to look at our kids. And then and that's why I think that's another reason I love preteen ministry so much, because they are just starting to own their own faith.
Yeah.
And what Jesus means to them,
right.
And not to mom and dad, and not to Pastor Rob or Pastor Brand or whoever. It's who we engage with Jesus personally with, and where he's going to lead me down that path, because he doesn't want us all to be the same. He wants us to be individual.
Yeah, we're all unique expressions of Jesus,
right.
Including our preteens.
Amen.
And the more we treat them like a unique expression of Jesus, the more we can help them go in the way they should go, and encourage them down that path. All right, last thing on the social media tech stuff. So are there any really practical tools that are good for parents? I know I'll share one thing that we've used that's been helpful. We got a router, and it's called a Griffin router.
Okay.
Gryphon. And they have different kinds, but it basically acts as a filter to what's coming into your house. You can't still filter everything, but generally it filters stuff. You set up profiles for each member of your family, and then you can assign an age, to those profiles, so that whatever devices are connected to their profile, it's that age group of filtering that works for that. So, and that includes like gaming consoles, it includes iPads, computers, phones, all that stuff. So that's been a helpful tool for us, and it's not foolproof. You can't just set it and forget it.
Right.
But it's got a lot of really neat tools in there that you can use. Are there any other tools similar to that you would encourage families to at least check out? Yeah,
there's two out there that I would totally recommend. One I've personally used as a parent growing up with Sid, and then one that was just starting to gain some traction, and right now it is probably the standard.
Okay.
So the first one is, there's something that's called the Disney Circle. Has nothing to do with Disney, whatever. Right. And it's a box that you buy, and you connect all your stuff to it. And you can the free version is just in your house. You can monitor everything that your kid's doing on any technology.
Right.
You can go in and turn it off. You can go in and turn the internet off. If you pay a monthly fee, then you can whatever internet they're on, wherever.
Right.
It's not that much. I think it's like $3 a month, something like that.
Yeah.
So for me, for $30-$40 a year, it was totally worth it.
Right.
That was kind of the standard back when Sid was going through it. It's still out. It's really good. I totally recommend it. The new one out there right now is called Bark Technologies.
Bark?
BARK, just like a dog barks. And it's actually, they are affiliated with the people that wrote this book. It wasn't a product push. I didn't realize that at first. And they didn't push the product. They just talked about what Bark Technologies does.
Okay.
And then I actually talked to Will Hutchinson, who was here on one of the Scene Event talkers.
Okay.
And he's affiliated with Bark a little bit, and we were talking about it, and he was explaining a little more to me.
Okay.
The beauty with Bark is what they do is when you access them and you give them access to your stuff, it's actually like an AI algorithm that monitors everything that's going on for your kids. So say your kid searches something on the internet like, they're having a bad day and they're like, oh, I just want to die. And they punch that in on their algorithm or on their Instagram. It's not going to flag that right away. Now, if they start to search, how do I, what suicide tech, how to commit suicide, do this. They will alert mom and dad with an email.
Okay.
It will go so far as if it reads it enough, they will dispatch 911 immediately.
Oh, wow.
So, and it monitors if your child starts to go, like, I would venture 99% of the kids early on get into a place on the internet that they don't know how they got to.
Right.
You know, one of the stories, one of the author talks about the reason he started this was his 11-year-old son came to him and made a comment at bedtime. He's like, Mommy, Daddy, you know Superman and Wonder Woman get naked together. And he said he instantly knew that his kid got into something.
Right.
Did his kid get online and research that? No.
Right.
But
came to him.
Right.
Him.
Bark Technologies monitors those things, and when they get alerted, it sends an email and alert to mom and dad, and and it goes down. Will let me know that I think over 1,000 kids they have saved from technology or from suicide because of alerts that it has sent through that.
And this is an app.
It's a program that you download and you pay a monthly fee for.
Okay.
They are actually, I was researching it last week with my parents. They are actually coming out with a Bark Technology phone, which integrates with iOS and Samsung and all that stuff. And it's like built right into the phone. So they are light years flying with this. And I think that's the way to go. I think it's going to be something because constantly things are changing.
Right.
And if they have an AI out there that is battling the stuff that our kids are battling, because the AIs that are on social media lead you down places and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's monitoring that stuff for you that we can't, I can't sit and watch what my kids do 24/7, but this does. And this will alert me. And 9 times out of 10, they're going down a road that they don't know. And then it also gives us a chance to control our flinch because we get an email saying, okay, now I can process how I want to go
I can breathe for a minute before I react.
Stuff.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so we're at the end of our time, Rob. Is there any other piece of advice, any other parting shot you'd like to give?
Yeah, fight for the relationship with your kid more than being right all the time. We're parents, and we want to be right. We want to teach our kids the right way to do things. But there's going to be a moment in time, and it's when they turn 18, that the reality is we don't have say-so anymore.
That's really good.
And one of the things they talked about in this book was the win for us. Our goal as a parent is to launch our kids into the world as healthy adults. And if we can do that, and we do that through influencing our kids through a relationship, not through being their boss all the time, not through being their parent all the time, telling them what they're doing wrong, praise them for when they do things right, have grace when they mess up, and fight for that relationship. Because when they're 19 years old and they call you up and they do something dumb at 19, 20, 21 that they don't have to, and you can walk them through that, that's what we want. You know, I remember even today at 48, or a couple years ago before my dad passed away, calling my dad up, Dad, I messed something up. How do I fix this? You know, I can't wait for that day when my kid calls me when she's an adult and a parent and calling me up for advice because I fought for the relationship over being right all the time.
That's so good. And that's the way God treats us, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. What a beautiful way to end it. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for who you allow Jesus to be in and through you to our preteens. I know you also help with youth quite a bit and then with parents as well. You guys, you and Jody have been a gift to Hopevale. We're really glad that you guys are here. That's going to be it for us today. Thank you for joining us on the Beyond podcast. We love celebrating the victories that Jesus is winning, and Jesus never stops working to draw people near to the Father. So let's continue to look beyond ourselves so that we can both celebrate and share who Jesus is and what he's doing in our lives and in our community. Bye, everybody.